Hey guys, for today's video, I'll be going over Daphne, who's one of, if not the best support in Duet Night Abyss. I'll be going over her kits, then her wedges, then her best melee weapons, her best ranged weapons, her teams, and then her introns. Starting off with her kit, for her skill, she grants the Emerald Effusion effect to herself, which allows her to generate 2 ace-off projectiles every second. These projectiles won't be too important, but they are going to contribute a lot to her sub DPS. She also continuously heals herself and allies based on her attack, while slowing enemies down in a small field around her. This will be pretty good for sustaining yourself and your allies, and it'll be good for keeping enemies grouped together. For her ultimate, she heals herself and her allies based on her attack, and then applies the Purification Formula effect to all allies, which increases anemo damage. This buff will let her act as not only a sustainer, but also as a support in anemo teams, since at max level, she can provide a whopping 21% anemo damage bonus. Her ultimate also restrains enemies for a bit and inflicts the Decay Formula effect, which decreases attack and deals anemo damage every 2 seconds. This effect will increase her sub DPS and it'll allow her to sustain even more since your allies will be taking less damage and the enemies will be stunned for a bit. Her ultimate also provides 1 out of a max of 12 ace-off projectiles for every teammate or enemy that was affected by her ultimate, which will increase her sub DPS tremendously when facing a lot of enemies. For her passive, it increases her ranged weapon trigger probability by 100% at max level when she has an ace-off projectile. She can hold up to 30 of them, and she consumes one to do more damage for every ranged weapon attack. This passive shows that Daphne will do a lot of her sub DPS by consuming ace-off projectiles, and by triggering bonus effects that do anemo damage. For her passive upgrade, she deals the same instance of dot damage with her ranged weapon as the one she does with her ultimate if she's holding an ace-off projectile, and this damage is based on her trigger probability, meaning that if you want to further increase her sub DPS, you're gonna want to max out her passive and give her a ton of trigger probability. For her other passive upgrade, she provides 40% crit chance for the active character and nearby allies. This is going to be incredibly powerful with characters that do ranged or melee weapon damage, but it won't do anything significant with characters like Lispel or Rebecca, aka skill DPS characters, since crit chance and crit damage buffs don't affect skill damage. For her skill priority, you're gonna want to level up her skill because you'll mostly be spamming that, then her ultimate and then her passive, but you should level up her ultimate first if she's being played with an anemo DPS because you want to make sure you get the maximum amount of anemo damage bonus. Anyways, how do you actually apply all of this information? Well, all you're gonna want to do is get close to enemies so that you can slow them down with your skill and apply the effects from your ultimate. You're also going to want to be vigilant of the buff icons on the bottom of the screen so that you can maintain her buffs at all times. And you're going to want to use her ace-off projectiles so that you don't overcap on them. You should also be close to your allies so that you can apply her ultimate effect and heal them. But obviously this is only in co-op since most of the time she's going to be acting as a combat partner. Anyways, for her character wedges, considering that 5-star wedges are pretty difficult to get right now since the game just released, I'll be going over what 4-star wedges she's gonna want instead. But you can still substitute a 4-star version of a wedge if you do have a 5-star wedge. She's gonna want the Prime Uplift or the Prime Serenity since they provide damage buffs or sanity buffs. Then she's gonna want 5 of the Blaze Eternity because it helps her maintain her ultimate and skill buffs. Then the Blaze Standfast because it provides some defense so that she doesn't get one-shots. Then the Blaze Volition since it improves her healing drastically. After that, she's gonna want the Sidestep for her core because it increases her tolerance cap and it provides healing. Also, if you don't have the Prime Uplift or the Prime Serenity, you can also use the other Prime options instead because the stat buffs they provide are the same, but don't choose the Prime Huntdown because it gets rid of a ton of skill damage. Also, having this wedge setup will be impossible without track shifting some slots, so you'll have to track shift the slot for the Blaze Volition and for the Prime Uplift or Serenity. For her best melee weapons, the Tether Slash will be her best because it increases her skill duration by 36%. For other alternatives, the Verdus Reeves would be good because of her weapon proficiency and because it provides a trigger probability, which increases her sub DPS increase from her passive upgrade. For another alternative, the Undying Oneros would also be good simply because of her weapon proficiency. For another alternative, the Blade Amberglow would also be good because it provides a ton of attack, which Daphne wants for her healing. Also, if you don't have any of the melee weapon options I've mentioned, you should simply choose choose a melee weapon that provides skill duration, skill efficiency, or skill range, increases her max sanity, or increases her attack. For her best ranged weapons, the Steel Breaker would be the best because it increases her skill duration by 36%. For another alternative, the Daybreaker Hymn would be good simply because of her weapon proficiency, and the Flamme would be good because it increases her trigger probability, which increases her sub DPS increase from her passive upgrade. Also, if you don't have any of the ranged weapon options I've mentioned, you should simply choose a ranged weapon that provides skill duration, skill efficiency, or skill range, increases her max sanity, or increases her attack. For her teams, she's gonna work really well in pretty much any team because she's a generalist support, but she will have some anti-synergy with skill-heavy DPS because her crit chance buffs don't affect skill damage. Thus, she's going to be really good with ranged and melee weapon characters like Outsider, a melee weapon DPS, and Lyn, a ranged weapon DPS, because her crit chance bonus will significantly improve their DPS. But she'll still be really good with characters like Rebecca and Espel, because even though her crit chance won't have a significant increase to their DPS, she'll still be able to provide plenty of support. She'll also be really good with the Nemo DPS characters because she provides up to a 21% Nemo damage bonus. She'll also work really well with Truffle and Filbert, since they too are a generalist support and they're a Nemo, meaning that Truffle and Filbert will be able to provide a 5% resolve buff with their passive upgrade. For her Introns, her I1 increases herself and her allies' damage by 10% when using her skill, which will only be decent, but it's still a nice supportive effect. For her I2, the Asoft projectile regeneration from her skill increases from 2 to 3, which will be decent considering her sub DPS isn't that important, but it will be a considerable improvement to it nonetheless. For her I4, it restores 1 point of sanity for every Asoft projectile consumed. This will actually be pretty good, considering that she can collect up to 51 Asoft projectiles per skill use, meaning that she can get a 100% sanity refund every time she uses her skill. For her I6, Daphne gains 1 out of 3 stacks that increase allies' damage by 7% for 12 seconds every time an ally that is affected by her ultimate damages an enemy that is affected by her ultimate. This Intron is going to give her a massive amount of value, since at I6 she now has the ability to increase your allies' damage by over 30% if we factor in her I1, and by over 50% if we factor in the Anemo damage bonus from her ultimate. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you wish to know more, you can click on the video to the right. With that being said, goodbye.